Ah, terminals, keeper of lore and unlocker of doors. In this video we'll look at painting the weathered beaten relics of pre-war America that you can find strewn around the various wastelands in the Fallout games. So, without any further ado, let's cue the music and enter the wasteland. To start out with, I'll be applying a few thin coats of rainy grey from scale colour paints over the sides and casings of this terminal. Now, rainy grey is on the warmer sides of grey tones, so you might find it difficult to find an equal equivalent in Games Workshop's colour line. But starting out with Storm Vermin Fur and adding a bit of white to it to get it to the same sort of lightness as Dawnstone would be a good starting point. And with this you don't have to be exact because we're going to be adding weathering and layers over the top of this. Once the rainy grey has dried, we are now going to start weathering the dingy plastic casing of this terminal. And to do this, I have heavily thinned some Games Workshop Mournfang brown and applying it like a wash over the miniature. I am then using a piece of paper towel to dab away the excess, which will leave the Mournfang brown in the recesses and leave a staining finish on the flatter surfaces. And the trick with this effect is to do a little bit, dab it away and see how you like the look of it. Like with all weathering effects, I advise that you start with a little and build the effect up to see how you like the look of it, rather than being disappointed with the finish and having to start again from scratch. Once that weathered wash has dried, the terminal should look something like this with a nice weathered finish. Once the Mournfang brown wash has dried, we can then start lightening up the colour with a dilapidated, torn and faded finish. To do this, we will be stippling on some light grey from Vallejo to provide a nice mottled effect onto the casing of the computer terminal. Stippling is very similar to dry brushing, whereas you get rid of most of the paint off your brush, but instead of moving the brush backwards and forwards across the miniature to catch the edges, you do a sort of stabbing motion to transfer paint from the bristles onto the model. And the great thing about this is it leaves a really natural, faded, ununiform effect on the casing of this computer, which gives it that really great "I've been stuck in the middle of a library or the back of a cupboard in a blown up police station for the last 200 years. Next, we're going to paint the black areas of the terminal. For this I'm using model colour black, but you can use any black that you happen to have. And for this is the casing around the front of the terminal, the screen itself and the back of the terminal. And I recommend that you do this in 2 thin coats to get a nice smooth coverage of the paint. Next, as an optional step, I'm coming in with some Petroleum grey from Scale Colour. Now this is a nice warm grey tone and I'll be using it to catch the raised areas of the black that we previously covered and anywhere that the light would hit on these areas. If you don't have Petroleum grey from Scale Colour, you could use Scavent Blight Dinge from Games Workshop as an alternative. And I suggest doing 1 thin coat of this just to add some colour variation onto the black. The next step will be to add the silver detailing to this terminal, and this will be items such as the buttons and dials, the board of the screen and the keyboard, and any other items you may want to pick out in silver. And to do this, I'm using black metal from scale 75, but you can use whatever your favourite dark silver colour is. It doesn't really matter here. And the trick with this is to add just a little bit of water to the paint and to lightly drag your brush across the keys. And be very careful when it comes to the buttons and the dials. With the border of the screen itself, using a thin brush, carefully with the thin down paint, trace the outline of the border of the screen, and don't worry if you make a mistake, you can always neaten up with your black paint from the previous step. The next part in painting this terminal will be to add some of that blue glow effect that you can see on the rear of the terminals to show that it is still powered on. And to do this, I'm using Caribbean Blue from scale 75, and I'm thinning it really to a glaze consistency, and I'm going to be putting this on the edges of the little bit that sticks out at the back of the terminal, covering about half of the area towards the outer surface. With this paint thinned right down to a glaze consistency, I'm then going to sort of outline the square part on the back of the terminal with a little bit of this Caribbean Blue. And what this simulates is light leak from inside the terminal, as if that back part hasn't quite fit properly, and it's showing that radioactive glow coming through from inside the terminal. And you may want to do a couple of coats or just the one coat. I would recommend doing this to taste. The last step in this tutorial, and to really sell this as a Fallout terminal, is to do that infamous password lock screen that you see on the computers in the games. And to do this, I've taken some Warpstone glue from Games Workshop and I've thinned it down a little bit more than usual. And I have taken a very fine brush and I'm doing very thin wiggly lines very slowly along the computer. And I used the in-game terminal as reference to this to show the positioning of the lines. And it doesn't matter if the lines are a bit thin at first, that's fine, we're just trying to get the structure down here, as long as we get the basic shape and structure of where the lines are going to be. Once we are happy with the pattern of this, we can then go in with a second coat once this is dried and refine the tone. If you really want to sell that curved screen look, you can apply the second coat just to the top third or the top half lines of text to show as if the light is stronger at the top of the screen. And there's no real secret to this, it is just doing very thin wiggly lines with thin paint and a narrow brush. And don't worry if you make mistakes, as this is just going straight on over black paint. What you can do is wait for it to dry, cover it up with the black paint, and then try again with another thin wiggly line. And with that, this terminal is now complete. A big thank you if you've managed to make it this far, and if you did enjoy this video, why not consider subscribing? It's free of charge, and you'll get further tutorials just like this one. See you next time, folks.